we'll go ahead and continue to talk about, let's see, here, I can show you something here.
When we think about the internet, we use.
Oh, didn't want to do that yet. So if you can see here, according to the lessons, so if you go in your Blackboard, you'll see that lessons tab, you open it, and these are all the lessons. So since we're at 5, let me back up. Let me go to the class schedule. Look at the class schedule. And so if you notice we're in week 5, if you follow me here, week 5, it basically says, sorry, not week 5. Week 6, but lesson 5, that's where I got it missing. That was just due Friday. So that's the internet technologies, right? And then the next week that I'm not gonna be here, week 7 is networking. And so you have an exam that week too. So that Saturday is an exam, and the exam covers 5 and 6. So we're gonna talk about 5 and 6 today, internet technologies. We've already talked a lot about the internet technologies part, so we'll move on to networking, which I will be here that weekend, that Saturday, okay? That, March the 2nd, but you will have some assignment to do optionally. And then right after that, that next week, March 9th, you come in here for your midterm exam. So the goal and midterm, as it says here, it should say here. Yeah, I don't have it here, but it's, yeah, chapters 1 through 5, okay? So make sure you're on top of that. If you have any questions about anything, chapters 1 through 5, I would take, since you will do exam 3 next weekend that I'm not here, I would take all my exams and study those for the midterm. That's a good way to do that. Now, we talked a little bit last week about the internet technologies. I wrote all these terms on the board and all that kind of thing, so I hope that helped, just having a whole bunch of terms to look at and kind of discuss and talk about. So what we'll do is we'll go down to chapter 5, and we'll go to So I've talked about the internet, I've talked about the World Wide Web, I've talked about a couple of these things. I want to give you a different perspective from a concept standpoint. I talked a lot about it, but I want to share some videos with you about it.
Let's talk about the internet. Now, you're probably using the internet right now to stream this video. You already know that the internet gives you access to an endless amount of data and information. It lets you send and receive data on a global system of interconnected devices. In this video, we'll describe the internet in terms of networking. As its name implies, the internet is an internetwork or a connection between networks. The internet is a collection of many different networks owned by many different entities that all share information and communicate together. The internet connects devices all around the world. There are parts of the internet that are managed by large corporations and other parts that are managed by individuals. But no one entity controls the entire internet. We may have a city here and a city here and a city here, and they all share a common way of connecting so that they can route signals between each other. At each spot, we'll have one or more ISPs, or internet service providers. ISPs don't manage the entire internet. Instead, they manage an access point to the internet. If you think of the internet as a big freeway, then ISPs would be the entity that manages the on-ramp to the freeway. They're responsible for building the on-ramp and keeping it maintained and open, but they're not responsible for the internet itself. The ISP is responsible for allowing both individual users as well as companies with large networks to connect to the internet. In this scenario, there's typically a security boundary that separates your network from the public internet. You may have devices on your network that access network servers, such as web servers and email servers. They're connected to the internet, but other computers that are on the internet cannot come in and contact devices within your network. As you can see, this creates a division of sorts between networks. Public networks share all devices and they're freely available. On the other hand, devices on a private network can access public network devices, but they themselves can only be accessed by other devices within the private network. Now, there may be exceptions. For example, in this network, we might have a particular server that we do want to make available to the public, such as a server that hosts a website. In order to do this, we would actually need to place our web server outside of this security boundary so that devices in other locations can reach this website through the internet. In essence, when I do this, I've made part of my network public, or created a small public network, if you will, that's connected to the larger internet. A related term that you might hear from time to time is intranet. An intranet is kind of like a miniature internet. It's a private network, not a public one, but it uses many of the same technologies that are used on the internet, such as websites and email. An organization's intranet may or may not be connected to the public internet. A security boundary prevents devices on the internet from accessing devices within the intranet. So, in summary, the internet is a large public internetwork, while an intranet is a private network that uses internet technologies but is only available to users within a particular organization. In this video, we describe the internet in terms of networking. We also compared and contrasted the internet with private intranets.
Alright, so last week, I talked about the intranet, and I mentioned, I stand corrected by the way, I mentioned using the intranet to order supplies and things like that within your organization. In actuality, that is called an extranet. Okay, so I stand corrected on that. I went back and reviewed some notes, and I was talking about the extranet, but the intranet that you get within your organization is things like, so if you are employed and you have medical insurance, or you have time, leave time, and things like that, that's how you get to those things in an organization. You're still using the internet technology, but the intranet will only have that because it pertains to you as an employee, like your leave time. That won't be open to everybody in the public. Accounting, what you get paid, that's not easy. So that's considered the intranet. To order supplies and shipping and all that, that's the extranet. Okay, I don't know if they're gonna talk about it or not, but I was reading and I saw that. I said, well, let me make that announcement, because I told you guys that supplies and things like that were part of the intranet, and it's not. It's actually, the companies use the extranet to do that, not the intranet. I mean the internet, intranet. I get those crazy, but intranet is where your medical, where if you have health benefits, if you have leave time, you access that through your company's intranet. Okay, because the person on the internet won't have access to that. Only within your company you can get access to that. So I hope that makes sense. You can't get to your time off and your benefits through the internet. You can get to your company, but you can't get to the intranet. You can only get that through your company. So you gotta have to go on your website on your company, and you can get to the intranet for those things. Does that make sense? All right, so cool, so that's, I wanted to clarify that, so before we move on. And so with that being said, World Wide Web, there's
The
a,
terms World Wide Web and Internet are often used interchangeably. In this video, the same thing. The web is just one of many technologies and services that use the Internet. Other Internet technologies often have nothing to do with the web. The Internet typically refers to the vast collection of networking hardware and physical computing devices that allow the exchange of information. These interconnected computing devices follow strict rules or Internet protocols to maintain efficient global communication and data integrity. The World Wide Web, invented in 1989 by an English scientist named Tim Berners-Lee, refers to interlinked digital content or information that's delivered over the Internet, usually through a
there
web
will be a
browser.
quiz after this.
Popular web browsers include
Not
Google
nothing
Chrome,
mandatory,
Microsoft Edge,
just
Mozilla
for your
Firefox,
knowledge.
and Apple Safari. In addition to web browsers and websites, components of the web include hypertext links between documents, URLs that uniquely identify web pages, and search engines that provide efficient ways of finding information on the web. While many web pages simply display static content, web browsers can also run complex computer programs. These programs are known as web applications or web apps. Examples include webmail, productivity software such as Google Docs or Google Sheets, multiplayer video game sites, and social media apps such as Facebook and Twitter. Web applications typically exchange information with special computers on the Internet called web servers. So, in summary, when we talk about the web, we're talking about content such as text, images, and streaming video that is delivered through a web browser. The web uses the physical devices and infrastructure that we call the Internet. Now let's look at some other technologies that use the Internet. You probably already know that not all devices on the Internet are physically connected to each other through cables. Wi-Fi is a technology that provides wireless Internet connectivity through devices called wireless routers. A Wi-Fi network uses radio waves to transmit data within a particular area, referred to as a hotspot. Email is an example of communications technology that may or may not use the web, but it'll almost always use the Internet. If you access your email through a web browser, you're using a webmail application on the web. But if you've installed a mail application such as Microsoft Outlook on your personal computer or on your phone, you might not be using the web at all. Your app can maintain its own Internet connection. Another technology that uses the Internet is called voice or video over IP. VoIP lets people make voice phone calls over digital data lines using Internet protocols. With VoIP, phone calls are made through a network connection routed through a standard phone line. When you make the call, it's converted into digital data and sent through the network or over the Internet. The Internet of Things refers to the network of physical devices that are connected to the Internet and capable of communicating and sharing data through sensors, network connectivity, barcodes, QR codes, and other technologies. The Internet of Things is made up of devices such as refrigerators, thermostats, streetlights, and environmental tracking systems. These devices all use the Internet to share their data and often allow people to control them remotely. Another example of making use of Internet technology is an intranet. Many businesses and academic institutions set up their own intranet, which is like a miniature internet. It's a private network, not a public one, but it uses many of the same technologies that are used on the Internet, such as websites and email. An organization's intranet may or may not be connected to the public Internet. A security boundary prevents devices on the Internet from accessing the devices within the private intranet. The web is just one of many technologies that use the vast system of interconnected devices we know as the Internet. By becoming more familiar with technologies such as the Internet of Things, Voice over IP, and business intranets, it's easier to see the distinction between the web as a system of accessible digital content and the Internet as a collection of physical hardware and protocols that keep them interconnected.
All right. So we know, even though the internet and the World Wide Web are used interchangeably, they're not the same thing. So they should not be used interchangeably. They should be used for what their intended purposes are. I said last class, and this is kind of redundant, and I'm doing that on purpose, being redundant, so that way when chapter 4 or 5 for exam 3 comes up, you'll know the differences. So the World Wide Web is a resource on the internet, and the internet is the structure that sustains all of the hardware and the software and the cables and all of that. If you can remember that, then you should be fine. And you know you gotta have an ISP to make all that happen, to actually get access, as the video said, the on-ramp to the internet. That's what the ISP does. All right, and then of course your IP address. Every device that communicates over the internet has to have an IP address. Looks similar to this. This IP version 4 or 8, IP version 6 parts, that's just a way for the internet to handle so many IP addresses. So as you start getting up in the version of the IP, it has logarithms in it that allows it to manage all the IP addresses. That's all that means. So when you see this, IP version 4 or IP version 6, that's just a way to manage this IP address. It's configured with the logarithms to do that. All right? And then you have, of course, HTTP and FTP. We talked about this also last class. Hypertext Transfer Protocol and File Transfer Protocol. That's simply the way files are being handled on the internet. For this case, it transfers data, right, content, and you have to have that HTTP in front for it to do what it needs to do. And FTP is just the upload and download portion of it all. That's what the technology is to do that. And of course your URL is your Universal Resource Locator. Why is that important? Because everything on the internet has a URL or an IP address. So in order for that to take place, you need to know where that resource is located on the internet, and it does it through URL, Uniform Resource Locator. We talked a little bit about Home Depot and all these different places, and you have a domain name server that converts those IP addresses, to an actual name, because you're not going to remember an IP address necessarily, and not as a human being. A computer will do a better job of it. That's why computers communicate using IP addresses. But you as a human being, we don't talk to each other saying, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 3, 6, 9, 1. We don't talk like that to each other. So the domain name server, the DNS, allows us to take that 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, look, talking like R2D2, and convert it to, hey, I need to find Home Depot. It's just that simple. And it gives it that IP address versus us trying to talk and remember the IP address for Home Depot versus all the websites we go to. We'll be crazy if we try to remember that, all those IP addresses just to get those to those websites. All right? And TCP/IP is the actual the standard. It's the protocol. It's what handles the transmission itself. Doing that, it handles all of that. It's called Transmission Control Protocol, which tells it all. It controls the transmission using rules. That's what that does. And we just already talked about the intranet, and that being like part of the internet, but a little bit smaller. And usually, if, like we said, with your job, you have benefits, you have time off, time paid off. You get to that using the intranet within your organization, okay? And voice over IP, that's just a way of making your voice travel over a digital medium to get to where it needs to go. That's a newer technology versus where we used to talk on a phone. We just pick up the phone and make a phone call and have a conversation with somebody. Now you can do that digital, and that's what VoIP is. And Wi-Fi, as we know, is a wireless internet connectivity through wireless routers, but the wireless routers also have the ability to be wired if you have an Ethernet cable. We talked about that last week as well. And then, of course, the Internet of Things refers to the network of physical devices that are connected to the internet. We talked about that also. Your refrigerator, see these newer refrigerators, you can actually see what's in your refrigerator. We got Ring doorbells, we got drones, all these things are Internet of Things because they use an IP address and you can communicate with them through your phone, okay? So wirelessly as well. All right, so with that being said, let's do this. So next week, you're gonna get an announcement kind of similar, because I won't be here next week. You'll get in your announcements, I'm gonna put in there what your activity you will be doing next week in lieu of class, okay? In lieu of class, in lieu of coming to class, you will have an activity that you're gonna do. It's optional, you don't have to do it, just like coming to class is optional. But I'm gonna give that to you because I have to give you something by me not being there. I gotta give you some kind of work to also do and reinforce your concepts of the, like for here, for example, subscribing to a RSS feed. If you don't know anything about RSS, once you do this, if you choose to do this activity, you will know more about RSS. So that way, if you get a question on a test that asks you about RSS, you should be able to recognize it fast if you do the activity. You don't, again, you don't have to do it, but that's just to reinforce the concept. And I will give you 2 activities to do next week instead of coming to class. We clear on that?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you're good on that?
Send the email out.
I'm going to send an email through an announcement. So it's going to be on the announcement, and when I create an announcement, it automatically sends an email to every student.
Okay.
So you will get an email. All right? So, but you can also check your announcements as well, and that's kind of how we'll do that. But I don't know which 2 activities, because they got activities throughout this whole entire thing, but I'm trying to stick with where we're at. So especially when we're coming upon midterm, it's probably going to be one of the activities that will be covered in the midterm. So it'll be 1 through 5. I don't want to give you something outside of 1 through 5, because that's what you really want to concentrate your efforts on, because that's what's coming up next, midterm. Right? So you want to be as prepared as you can for midterms, all right? All right, so let's see what else. All right, so here we go. We're gonna do this quiz now that we've kind of beat all the topics and those subjects for the last 2 weeks to death. So now I ask that you all participate in this quiz. And again, this is no points against you, this doesn't count against you, it's just so you can reinforce seeing some questions. And the more I put you in front of questions, the more questions you'll probably see on the midterm and things like that, and you'll know how to deal with them and how they look. So the first question says what? Which of the following terms describe an enormous public network that connects billions of devices and networks around the world? What's the answer? Internet. All right, so let's do that. And let's move on. Are you, anyway, are you doing these section quizzes anyway? Yeah, you are. Okay, good. Because this is a good practice for what you're gonna see on like the exams and midterms. It'll be close to this, if not this. All right, which of the following terms describe a global system of interconnected hypertext documents and files that can be accessed through the browser? All right, so I want to tell you this too. When you're doing this, especially test-taking strategies, if you're doing this and you're looking for the right answer, there are clues in there that will tell you what's probably the right answer. Like, for example, if you're talking World Wide Web, and from your knowledge of the concept of World Wide Web tells you that it is a hypertext document, correct? So if you know that about World Wide Web and you see hypertext document, it's hard to call it something else, right? So these are test-taking strategies that will help you, and typically it's always embedded in the question anyway to give you the clue to what they're even talking about. So worldwide, why would it not be wide area network? Because wide area network really, and it's kind of hard because wide area network covers a wide area and talks about something totally different than a document, right? So that'd be your clue to say, oh, that's not the answer anyway. So, but anyway, once you see hypertext document that's access to a browser, that's pretty much the definition of a World Wide Web. A resource on the World Wide Web is nothing but a hypertext document. Anyway, so if you know that, you should be good to go. We'll move on to the next question. Next question is, which of the following terms describe
an organization that connects users to the internet?
what's the answers?
Internet service provider.
The internet service provider? Yep, ISP, because that's exactly what it does. Thank you. I'm not gonna mark these, we're just gonna go through them and please understand. So let me ask you a question now that we're here. Week 5 discussion question, I think it might be week 4, week 5. But anyway, it might be 4. But a question was asked, what are the 4 types of computers? And I looked on my other class, I looked in this class, and a couple of students list the 4 types of PCs. What are the 4 types of PCs? Huh? Can't hear you.
Desktop, laptop, iPhone, well, smartphone, tablet.
What's the 4 types of computers?
iOS,
Huh?
iOS,
I can't hear you.
iOS,
IO,
iOS,
iOS? No, that's not a.
L.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, talk. You can talk. Go.
Alright,
No, that's all right. Talk. I mean, it's nothing wrong with clarifying something that you're saying what it is, but you don't know the answer, but you're gonna know the answer. So that way it's better in your head. It ain't, again, this is not about right or wrong. This is about expressing how you feel the concept is. And we can fix that because we can tell you. I can tell you what it is. So, for anybody else, 4 types of computers.
Supercomputer.
Thank you. Okay. What else?
Home computer.
Mainframe.
Say again.
Microcomputer.
What's a microcomputer?
iPhone,
Huh?
The
iPhone.
iPhone? So iPhone is not in the category of a 4 types of computer. That's a category of a type of a PC. That's a personal computer. I want to get that right because I'm seeing a lot of students getting it mixed up. And I want you to have it right so you'll understand how to answer the question the next time you see it. So, a smartphone is part of a PC, right? So we got supercomputer, we got, what else?
Mainframe.
Mainframe. Okay, what else? Anybody crazy? Somebody said something else.
Is that personal computer?
Personal computer, right? Okay, within that, then you have, again, this is not one of the 4 types of computers. This is one of the types of personal computers. And over here, then you should be saying smartphone. What else over here? What we have for personal computers?
Tablet.
Wearables, huh?
Watches.
What else?
Tablets.
Tablet,
PC.
PC,
Desktop.
desktop,
Laptop?
thank you, laptop. Are we at 5 yet? Over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to answer that question, this is the 4 types of PCs, right? And these are the, well, we got one more left. The 4 types of computers. There's a difference. Don't get it twisted on the test. Because if you answer 4 types of computers, like these are the 4 types of computers, you will get it wrong. Okay? Please be clear. So what's the other one? We got one more here. Most people miss this. And I never got the answer to the mini computer, because I see that a lot from students, and I don't know what a mini computer is.
Need it.
Hmm?
I don't need it.
So it's not a type of computer. Then you see people say microcomputer. So a microcomputer is a personal computer. Okay? Right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So a microcomputer is a personal computer. We got one more still. Mid-frame. Mid-frame or mid-range. What's a mid-range computer? We always miss this because they don't say that in the normal conversation, that a mid-range computer that's interchangeable with. They don't never tell you mid-range and regular computer genre and on the job. They never say to you, can you go to the mid-range room and look at the computer? Because a mid-range computer is nothing more than a server. Okay? That's the same thing as a server. So, for a test, please make sure that you understand if they have mid-range as a choice as a computer, please understand that that's a server. That's exactly what it is. They
Yes,
just
sir.
use those two interchangeably, but where you get cheated at is no one never say, can you go to the mid-range and look at it? They say, always say server, right? You hear server, do you ever hear mid-range? No. So that's the whole point of kind of being in this session of this class, is now you know. That's what a server is also called, a mid-range computer. All right? So we got that. So the next, good morning. The next, yes, sir.
Hey, what's the example of a supercomputer?
What's the what?
What's an example of a supercomputer?
So like, you ever watched the lottery?
Yeah.
And those numbers come up and the lady call out those numbers? Guess what's producing those? Supercomputer. Why did I say that? Why did I use lottery? Because the whole, you know how many people play numbers? There's a lot of people that play numbers, right? So they need a computer that can handle all those numbers going in so they can pick the least likely number. That's the whole point of the supercomputer. And they gotta have that processing power. I use that as an example because that's the best way to describe the amount of processing power it takes for everybody all over the world to play numbers. As many people play numbers for very few people to hit it. Right? Am I correct? They make $1 billion over numbers. You know how much they pay out? They get $1 billion. They call it it's $1 billion lottery. But the actuality, the numbers gotta be get picked for that. A supercomputer does that. So it takes, like, say me, you, everybody in this class played a number 1 in the lottery, if you will. It'll compute every number 1 that's played, And the probability of it being a reality will be against the number of people that played it. So let's say all of us played it versus one of us played it in here, that supercomputer will know that, and it'll probably call that number, because the likelihood of you getting that number, that just that single number, is gonna be, will go against a logarithm. And that logarithm will tell you only one person in this whole class out of the number, it won't say this class, but out of the number of people that played a number, only one person selected a number 1. And that will be more than likely how it calls that number. So the likelihood of someone having a 1 for all those lottery numbers will be already shot down, because you don't even have the 1. Because the probability of you collecting and getting a 1 will be very low when you deal with a supercomputer. And that's what insurance companies, they mostly have mainframes because they're older, but a lot of insurance companies make so much money, they move to a supercomputer and find a way to basically, I hate to say it this way, but of not paying you your claim.
Right.
So they use a supercomputer. So you're up against a lot of things when you decide to pay your insurance. It's just really, it's a hard place for a consumer to be. But this right here is the culprit. And, you know, because before that they had mainframes, and mainframes were really good, they just wasn't as fast. Now, supercomputers are way faster than mainframes. Mainframes are not used for their speed. They're used for their processing power and their ability to store data. Supercomputers do that too, but they do all of that faster. That's what it boils down to, okay? So this next question, which of the following terms describe an organization that connects users to the internet? We already answered that?
Yes.
Okay, good. A blank is a private network.
I was doing that at home yesterday.
You did?
I was doing it at home yesterday.
What, this here,
Yeah.
network error?
Yeah, it must be Blackboard then, because I thought it was me on my own computer.
Yeah,
Now
so
I see
since,
it here.
yeah, so since you see it here, 9 times out of 10, it might not even be Blackboard, because remember this. When we go to this, we're going to it through Blackboard, but we're accessing a whole different site. You look up top.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? If you go back to Blackboard, Blackboard probably won't give you this problem. You probably won't have this problem in
First
Blackboard.
semester they're using that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. That's why we've been having all these problems.
happening.
Yeah, so that's one of them. So when you see this, please make sure you identify the source of the problem. And the source of this problem, even though you went through Blackboard, the source of the problem is where your IP address is. In that top line. That's where your real problem is. Yeah, we have to go through Blackboard to get there, but we do when we click on it, it takes us to a different, what? URL.
It's part of
Right.
the combination of it switching from
That's
that
usually it. That's usually it. And they may have some maintenance things going on that will say a network error. It might not even be a network error. They just don't, you're not on the schedule, the maintenance schedule, so you don't know what the maintenance schedule is. It could be a maintenance schedule at this point. We don't know that. They'll tell you network error, but you know, it could be a maintenance.
It didn't mess anything up, all I did was reload it.
That's exactly right.
And then it would be the same.
Yep. So hopefully that clears up. And it's another thing, let me tell you this too. When you get this, let's say you taking a test and you get this, what's the best thing? What's the best course of action?
Reload.
Reload, okay. What if it still continuously do this?
Contact you.
I wouldn't say contact me, but I would say document it,
Yeah.
do a screenshot. Then that way, if you having problems, you got your proof. As opposed to going, I was having this problem, and don't tell me what the problem was. Or don't say what the problem, or at least document it. So that way you'll have it, and you can have it for your notes and say, hey, this happened, and date stuff, you know? This happened on this date. If you can capture a date, which I don't see no date here. So if you were to screenshot this and hold it for your records, I always create a Word document. So if anything happens abnormally when I'm doing things, I put this in my Word document. I already have a running Word document automatically, so I just take a screenshot, but I would date it. Because it's important. You sent me this. When did this happen? I have no clue when it happened. So, if you're in IT, cybersecurity, whatever, your best friend is documentation. Because if you don't document anything, date and time, and you try to get support for it, how do people know when it occurred? Right? So throughout my career, or even in the military, I always had to document things as they happen. So that way there'd be a reference point. And plus, you do some CYA. I don't know if y'all know what that means, but yeah, that's exactly what it means. And so you cover yourself. Just like I always ask you guys to send me an email if something happens. That way you CYA. Because it don't matter. The bottom line, it don't matter it happened. The bottom line is if it did and you got documentation and you covering yourself, so that way, let's say it ends your test immediately and gives you a score. And you send me something, don't tell me when, what, how can I substantiate that? So please make sure you guys, that you're doing that. You're screenshotting things and putting a date on it. That will help the situation. Regardless whether it's for a grade or for your job, doesn't matter, because you're covering yourself. All right? So, a blank is a private network that utilizes the same technology as the internet. So what is it? Uses the same
Intranet.
Intranet.
intranet. Yep. Yep. Next.
Which of the following is used to identify specific hypertext resources on the World Wide Web? 8.
URL.
URL. Very good. Everybody know that?
Yes,
Good?
sir.
All right, let's go on to the next question.
Which medium does Wi-Fi use to send data between networks and devices?
Hmm?
Radio.
Radio wave. Confirm. All right.
VoIP.
Mr. You gonna read it?
Which of the following technologies can be used to make a phone call over an internet link?
So for those who don't know, what's the clue? Make a phone call. Make a phone call. If you see that, you should know that it's over internet connection. That means it's digital. All right, so we got that. I'm just trying to help y'all look at context clues. All right, this one here, you have to drag whatever it is to the appropriate response and drop it in the appropriate response. Where's this one going? Stop me when
The last one,
last one. Okay. Stop me.
third one, I think.
Third one. Stop me.
Oh, no,
No.
that goes where internet is.
That goes on the fourth one, because internet is the fourth one.
Yeah.
Internet
Fourth
is the
one.
fourth one.
Yeah.
ISP is third one.
ISP is the third one.
Browser, cloud computer is the first one.
Browser,
No, cloud computing is the first one.
cloud computing.
Then browser.
Alright, browser. I would take this, screenshot it, put it in that Word document I was telling you about, and you use this as also as a study guide. okay?
You can check your answers as you go and it'll tell you if it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But as a whole, you want a document you can look at and already know the definition of, you know, of the concept, I'll call it. So that helps you too. So you can do it another way. Study skills are creative, okay? But this is one way I would do it. Copy, screenshot that whole thing, and then I'll have it in my Word document that I'm studying by. And for chapter would be 5, this will fall into chapter 5. Alright, go ahead, Mr. Saeed.
Which of the following is a disadvantage of web applications?
Carry a monthly or yearly fee.
Say it again,
It carries a monthly or yearly fee.
I still can't hear you.
Carries a monthly or yearly fee.
Okay. Alright,
The first one.
agree, okay, so everybody agree?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
And all of the following formats may contain incorrect or misleading info. On which should you be most careful about trusting the details you come across, as it may seem academically reviewed, but in fact isn't.
Wikis?
Wikis.
Wiki, very good, very good. Alright, so we got that.
Yes, sir.
I didn't answer all of them anyway, so, but anyway, at the end of all these, I know you already know this, you just score the quiz, and it'll give you a score. That doesn't count against you. Section quizzes do not account against you, okay? So, you can pretty much, anybody tried to take it more than once, a section quiz? So you can also do that.
I take it multiple times.
Yeah.
I'll go through like 3 or 4 times and take them over and over.
Very good, very good. So they said all incorrect, 'cause I didn't answer those, but anyway, just wanted to take you through that a little bit. I'm not gonna go through all of that, I'm gonna go to the section quiz. Because that's really where, like this right here, and we'll do that. I think we'll get more answers this way. Alright, let's go.
The whole side.
Saeed, you fell off.
Oh. Which of the following is considered part of a smart home?
First one.
The first one.
First one here?
Yeah.
Alright. Again, I'm not gonna select the answer, we just moving on to the questions.
Yes, sir.
Alright, let's do it.
Owners of internet-enabled cars can use their phones to do which of the following?
Monitor fuel usage. The first one.
First one,
Yeah.
don't you wish they could change traffic lights? Okay, next question. Which of the following is used to change traffic lights for emergency vehicles?
The last one.
ITCS.
What is that? I don't even know what that is. Well, ain't but one way to find out.
It's this thing that the emergency vehicles use, they basically change the lights. It'll tell you if you click check my answer at the bottom.
A traffic control system to timing traffic lights, basically.
They can change it when they're, you know what I'm saying, on the way.
Gotcha. So, smart ambulance service system. Okay, all right. Some IP enabled devices
Are not considered IoT devices.
IoT devices, which of the following is considered an IoT device?
Smart door lock.
Smart door lock?
Yeah.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. What is one of the things that has set Siri apart from other digital assistants?
Easter eggs.
Yeah. I'm telling y'all, this is the first time I'm seeing some of these questions, I'll be honest. Which digital assistant was named after an artificial intelligence in the Xbox video game?
Cortana.
That's Windows.
Like, I couldn't put two and two together, like, all the time, like, I play Halo all the time.
A major capability of Alexa is its ability to do what?
Control smart devices.
To control, yeah.
Alexa.
See, a lot of these things y'all know just by having the device, which is good. Which digital assistant is native on Apple devices like the iPad?
Siri.
Say again?
Siri.
Alright. Which digital assistant was one of the earliest?
Siri.
Siri is a beast.
Which digital assistant's voice was inspired by the voice of the supercomputer on the USS Enterprise in the Star Trek series?
Alexa.
Okay. Very good.
Oh yeah, that's more like it.
That's good. Now, let's go ahead and start it on. Alright, so that was really chapter 5. That was mostly all the things that were covered in chapter 5. We're gonna move on to chapter 6, which is actually next week, but you'll get a preview because I won't be here next week, but I will, like I said, give you the assignments that are optional for you to do in lieu of coming to class next week. It'll be in an email to you. And again, you don't have to do the assignment, that's up to you. It's just gonna reinforce the concept for that chapter. And so since chapter exam 3 is due next week, Friday, I won't be here that Saturday, so what you'll get will more than likely be some of the in-class, they call them in-class activities, and they require you to do certain things. You will see that. But again, if that's something that you are not necessarily wanting to do or participate in or figure out how it works, you don't have to. This is just so you'll have some concept of some idea of that concept for that particular section. All right, let's do this. Let's see what this is.
Which quiz is it? What part?
This is 5. This is still 5.
5 point what?
8. You'll see it when it comes up. Because I don't remember 5.88.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the first one, pressing. Besides entering a URL to go directly to a website, what else can you enter in a browser address bar to explore the internet?
The last one,
Last one.
Yeah.
search terms.
Okay. All right. Wikipedia is considered which of the following sources?
The first one. Tertiary.
Okay. No, I'm not answering.
Which of the following is most likely to have peer-reviewed material written by an expert in the field?
Academic journal. That one.
Academic journal.
Yeah.
And which
Just
of the
like a medical journal, all the experts go to a journal for the most part. Would you consider a newspaper?
which of the following are primary sources? Select 2.
Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and the United States Constitution.
Now we're talking. That's more like it.
Okay.
And which of the following is the best reason to look up for articles in an online academic database?
The sources are more likely to be peer reviewed. The second one.
Okay. Okay.
And which method?
Other answers, I'm gonna move on. Which method should be used to search for an exact phrase?
With extract quotes.
Okay. Alright, so this is one of those drag and drop scenarios. So first one, primary source,
Transcript of a speech by the mayor.
okay, secondary source,
The first one, the third one actually.
News articles.
one of three,
The third one, three.
three,
Yeah.
of course, it only leaves us one left, right?
Yeah.
Alright, so please understand those the best you can for the types of sources. And, let's see. You submitted the same paper from high school for a college class. What form of plagiarism is this?
Cells.
John is using synonyms to replace words while keeping the meaning of the original phrase. Which form of plagiarism is he engaging in?
Mosaic.
Mosaic,
Yeah.
You're inadvertently using comparable wording or sentence structure. Which form of plagiarism are you engaging in?
Accidental.
Accidental, yeah.
Accidental, yeah.
So the
okay. We're gonna move on to, chapter 6. Okay. PowerPoint. Alright. Says networking basics. So, when we talking network, what are we speaking basics? What are we alluding to? This is chapter 6, by the way. So it's another chapter. So these are some of the things, advantage of computer networking. So tell me, what's the advantage of even having a computer network? Nobody? Anybody? Somebody?
More resources, higher
Yes,
computers,
yeah,
higher
yeah. So
computing
why do we-
speed.
Yeah, so why do we even use a network? What's the whole point of having this computer, all these computers, but having them interconnected through what? How are these computers interconnected? How are these computers a part of a network?
They got their own ID.
They have their own ID. What's the form of them communicating with each other? Server. What's the line that allows them to communicate with each other? Ethernet. So if you notice on every one of these computers, there is an Ethernet port, and not only a port, there's an Ethernet cable. That Ethernet cable goes where? Anybody? Where does it go from this computer? Where does it go to? Does it go to this computer and then try to go to this? How does that Ethernet actually establish communication? So, from the Ethernet, where's this line, this Ethernet running to?
Local area network.
Where's that at? Hmm? Well, yeah, you sort of hitting on it, but they call it a wiring closet. So every one of these Ethernet cables that come out of this cable, running down, they run through here, and at the end of every one of these rows, there is I guess I'll call it a conduit. If you look, there's a round cylinder thing on the floor, and all of the cables are feeding into that, and that's running, and not necessarily downstairs, but right there in the corner, there's a wiring closet. Why is that wiring closet there? We talking network now. So what if something happens to one of these computers within the network? How do you troubleshoot it? How do you fix it? You go to, well, you go to the offending computer, but the only way you're gonna find that typically is in the wiring closet. The wiring closet is where all of these wires we're talking about that are in that conduit, they're going somewhere underground, probably through another conduit, till it gets to the wiring closet, and then the wiring closet is set up in what they call a patch panel. And a patch panel is nothing more than pretty much a router, for the most part. It accepts all of these Ethernet cables. Once it accepts those, sometimes you can go in there and you can see the light. All of them have lights above the port that they plug into. And either the light is on or it's not on. There's another way you can trace that line or that light that's out back to the actual computer. Here, we used to do it the old school way. We used to do it with a toner and a sniffer. So we take the toner, put the toner here, right? And once you put the toner here, we go into the wiring closet and sniff the tone. It'll be a beep, it'll beep, you'll hear it. The closer you get to the offending wire or the offending computer, it'll be a louder tone, and you'll know that that's where the problem is. And you either replace the wire, or you come here and you try to figure out from here. But at least it'll point you to whichever, there's a lot of computers in here, at least 30. So you wanna go through, spend your time, go through each one of those versus going to the wiring closet, checking for the offending problem, and then you can go directly. Now, a smart, I don't know how they do it nowadays, but a smart technician would have each one of these wired, numbered. So say for instance, this will be, for me, if I was doing this room, this will be 1-1. So first computer, first row. Second computer, first row. Third computer, first row. So that way, when I get in my wiring closet, it should be named the same thing for that port. So that port that corresponds to this 1-1, on my wiring closet, in that port, I should have a 1-1 above that. So I'll know which computer I need to go to once I identified it in the wiring closet. I know where I need to go. And then I just come in this room, if it's row 1, if it's row 2, or if it's row 3, I know exactly, I'm not wasting my time. By that simple technique. And same way, 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and on and so forth. 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, so forth, so forth. And so that way I'll know, once I get an offended computer, wiring closet, do my skill, and once I perform my skill, then I can walk right to that computer. Just that simple. But that's the old-fashioned way. They do it different now because they can track it down on using more sophisticated tools to identify that computer. The same way I just did it, that's just the manual way of doing it. They have now tools that will identify on the network immediately which one is the causing problem. But I learned manually because we had to do it before we had all this sophistication. And I'm glad I know it that way, because if the sophistication breaks down, I can still service these computers without needing that. So that's how that works. All right, so the difference between a local area network, which is a LAN, and we talked a little bit about the wide area network. What's the difference between these two?
Local area could be like a building or a campus, and WAN could be like a city.
You got it. So that's exactly what it means by wide area. It's covering a wide area, which usually means city and city, versus local. This right here in this room could just be considered a local area network. Okay. All right. Describe common network technologies, including bus, wing, ring, star, and mesh. What's the deal with that? What's the whole point of having This is an older technology, bus, looks similar like this. Boom, 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 boom. That's a bus. All right, excuse my drawing. I'm not an
In a
artist.
local area network.
Sebastian, come up here. All right, so this is what it is. What's the advantage of this type of topology? I know y'all haven't done this yet. Y'all haven't gone through this.
For trucking,
Huh?
for trucking,
For trucking? What do you mean by that?
you just said, you for, truck.
So, in terms of computer technology, you're saying for trucking?
No, he's saying for tracking.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize for talking. Yeah, you can use that because guess what? I mean, you can use it for that. Let's say that computer goes offline. What happens? In a bus topology.
Oh, the boxes are computers.
Hmm?
The boxes are computers.
Yeah, they're computers on a communication line or channel.
So this wouldn't be a bus. This wouldn't be a bus.
No, only because it's tied by the Ethernet. So all of them got Ethernet, but they go through a more sophisticated device. And that's a different type of topology that this is on, but it's configured like a bus, but it's not a bus. A bus is strictly computers that are all on one communication line. These are on multiple communication lines because they're using the Ethernet to go through a router, a wiring closet. And the wiring closet controls all of the sophistication of it. Yes, sir.
What if the network fails, if one of them went down?
Yes, so if one of those, so the computer that I crossed out on a bus topology would no longer communicate with all the other computers on that bus. Okay, that's the disadvantage of this. The advantage of it is it's cheap. It's a cheap topology to employ. So anytime you're doing that, all you gotta do is have one communication line and how many other computers you're gonna put on that one communication line. That's the advantage, the cheapness of it. The disadvantage, like you said, Nikki, is that if this goes out, none of these other computers will be able to communicate with that one. That's how that works. So that's the advantage. People use it still for strategy because let's just say you have a room and you want students to come in and do their application. So you just set up a bus and all the students will have access to those computers. That doesn't affect it a whole lot. They just there and it's just serving that purpose. But when you want to communicate with other computers outside of the computers that are on the bus, that's not a good concept. Okay? Because if one goes bad, you can still connect to other computers on the internet, but the topology itself will cause a problem if one of the computers on there goes down, you can't communicate with that computer. So that's that issue. A ring. A ring looks like this. A ring. On that ring, you have computers. Right? Okay. All right. Now, let's call those computers on the ring. What happens here?
Each one is connected to?
Each one is connected to, but what happens if that one computer in that ring goes down?
Does it affect
Uh-huh.
does it affect the other computers?
What?
I think it will affect the other computers.
It will. And the reason why is because it is in that ring. So that ring is kind of like the bus, straight bus technology, topology, but the ring is a continuous communication. Well, guess what? Like you said, if one of those computers goes down, it's just like the bus almost, because now you've broken the circle. It can't do anything else, so you have a problem there. That computer will not be able to communicate with any other of those computers on that network, and neither will any of the others. So you've in fact broken the network. So that's the problem of a star. Now, I mean a ring, sorry. So that's the ring. That's the disadvantage. Always when you knock a computer off a network, regardless of the type of network, you're gonna always cause some kind of problems anyway. But at least in some of the other areas of networks that we'll see, they still will be able to communicate with each other. The bus and the ring are basically really the only two topologies that will stop communicating, will stop the other computers from communicating with each other. Because once one breaks, there is no more communication. Okay?
What's the main difference between the bus?
I'm sorry?
What is the main difference between both?
Between what?
Between the ring and the bus?
The ring and the bus. I mean, it really matters is how much territory you have to lay it out and how much space you have to lay it out. Some of these fit easily in certain, that's why it's also strategy associated with the type of topology you select, because they all fit in some kind of space somewhere, and you can make them make them communicate with other computers. But the main difference is just really how it's physically laid out. That's the main difference. There's no real other difference, if you will. There have been theories that if this one goes out, the rest that are on here can still communicate. You know, I feel that regardless, if one computer falls off your network, whatever type of topology you use, it affects the whole entire network, either way. So you're gonna have to do something about it, replace it, refix it, or whatever. So for me, it's just how you're gonna fit it in to your, and how much money you have, because both of these are not expensive to employ. Okay? Because all you got is a communication line, and the computers that go on that communication line. That's the real cost involved. So that's inexpensive. Compared to, there's a star, which looks like, kind of like that, a star shape, and computers at the end of each one of those. Now, on this one, because they have a central computer, so if something happens, well, I ain't gonna include this. If something happened to the central computer, you know what's going on. But if something happened to this computer, what happens?
Network still able to communicate?
Say again?
Network still able to communicate
Why?
because they're a centralized point.
Yeah, so they have a central computer. So they usually call that of some sort, either it's smart or intelligent, or even it's a passive router. So a smart router will make it efficient to get to the message to the next computer, whoever it's intended for. A passive will do that too, but it's gonna do a lot slower. But the key in a ring is gonna be the centralization. So that main computer that controls all the traffic. So if it was no computer here, this would basically be like this one. But except for it'll have a bunch of different avenues to go through. It'll start because it has a intersection point of all the computers. So the line intersects somewhere. So if you have a router, a smart device here that can control all of that, it'll make it more efficient. And you won't have as much congestion on your network. Because that's what that job of that central computer is to do, is to identify where the traffic is and how much traffic, and reroute it and take it somewhere where it needs to go. Okay? So that's a ring. Then star. I'm sorry, star. I'm getting them kind of mixed up. But bus, ring, star, and then this last one, mesh. So a mesh is a hybrid topology. Why is it a hybrid technology? Because it employs more than one topology. It could have the bus connected through one computer on it that connects it to another part or another topology. So they all can be utilized and used for the various different purposes. I think I have a good illustration in the book, but the bottom line is, again, the advantage of a mesh is because you can go through so many different types of connectivities, if you will, but the disadvantage of a mesh is hiring a person to maintain that kind of topology. You need somebody that's an expert in bus, ring, star, and mesh, and plus firewalls and all that. You gotta have that person, and that person is expensive to understand how that technology is gonna go throughout the entire mesh network, if you will. So, with that being said, you can actually look up a mesh on your, on your computer. You can look up a mesh. But the bottom line is, what you really need to understand is a mesh is a combination of all of the topologies. That's the test answer. For the test, what is a mesh topology? It's a combination of bus, ring, and star, okay? And they use it strategically, whoever employs this, they use it strategically for the different parts sometimes of their actual entire network. So it just depends on how they use it. All right?
What happens again if one computer goes off?
On a mesh?
Yeah.
Nothing. Because it'll find a way, kind of like in that star with that actual central computer, it'll act the same way. But a mesh has so many different points in it that if one does go down, because it's all connected together at one point, all of it is connected, it will use that smart device, if you will, for that one computer that goes offline, it will reroute everything. But here's a trick. That's why I say that person that you hire to do a mesh topology in your organization has to be knowledgeable of a lot of the networks, the bus, the ring, the data. And the reason why is because they gotta understand that if that one computer you're talking about goes offline, it's on a bus network in the organization. They should be able to identify that. But here's the key, why? Because when that goes offline, the person that is administering the mesh, the network administrator, has to go, not him necessarily, but somebody gotta go to that computer, and they may have to replace that computer. Well, guess what? The bus part of their network might be in Arizona, right? So that's okay too, because all you do is put a call into Arizona, get their tech to either replace it or fix it or see what's wrong, what's going on. So that's how that works in a mesh. A mesh is really good because that's what most major companies anyway have. The type of network they have is a mesh. And so they have regional people because this mesh is all over the place. There's a lot of locations, just like the internet. I mean, yeah, the internet is. So you gotta have the staff. That's why it's more expensive. You gotta have the staff to support a mesh. If you have a mesh, 9 times out of 10, strategically, you making the money to support a mesh if you got one. You know what I'm saying? It's usually the people that just have stars and these others that their budget is different. But most organizations in existence today are on a mesh topology, okay? The main thing you wanna understand before getting too deep into it is what they look like. A bus looks like that, a ring looks like that, star looks like that, and a mesh is a combination of all of those. And people in organizations use those to fulfill whatever need they have for their organization. That's why it's more strategic than it is anything else. because that's how they spend their money, strategically to cover that. All right, so explain the role of clients and servers on the network. So, what are these computers right here in here right now? Servers or clients? They're clients? Everybody agree?
Yep.
They're
Why?
clients?
Why?
Why are they clients? Because they're requesting information from a server. You know what I'm saying? They could be a server too, but they have to have the server software on them to actually be a server. But if they don't have the server software on it, then it is not. It's considered a client. And a client does nothing more than request information from a server. Let me give you a great example. On your computer, do you have a general purpose software on your computer? First of all, what is general purpose software?
Settings.
Huh?
Settings.
No, your general purpose software is Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and any kind of database. Like usually you'd be Access database. Those are what we call your general purpose software. Why do we call them general purpose software?
Because varieties of tasks, you generally use them. You have to use.
Thank you. That's the easiest way to explain it. You generally use those to do your everyday tasks. You more than likely will create a Word document before you will go into a specialized application and do anything. So how many of us use AutoCAD? Okay, so we have a few, right? But that's not the majority. How many of us here use Word? That should be everybody's hand pretty much. Or some derivative of a text or a text processing document. Either way, the point is general, most people use. AutoCAD is called a specialized application. So only people that have a D. Accounting has specialized applications that they use to do accounting. Everybody on here don't use accounting software, right? Just like everybody in here don't use AutoCAD. And then there's another one, mobile app. So you have your mobile on your phone. You got apps on there too. So those are the three main ones: general purpose, specialized, and mobile apps. So we go back to the role of the client and server. Even when you have your cell phone or your smartphone or whatever you want to call it, when you're requesting that app service, that's not on your computer. That goes to a server to access that application, right? So that's the difference. That's the role. So your client requests information from a server, and the server gives that information back. That's why the role of transmitting data is so important to understand. Because when you accessing or you requesting services from a server, you're actually sending a request. Even though it's transparent to you and you request it, like I was getting at the general purpose software that's on here, when you ask to get it, it's actually getting that from a server. Just because the icon is on your desktop, on your client, you don't have that actual software loaded on here. You just have the icon that goes to the server and gives you access to Word, PowerPoint, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it works. So that's the role between the client and the server on the network, okay? All right, describe standard devices and interfaces used in wired networking. So I kind of just said that for the most part. So in a wired network, what does that mean? Versus, in this case, a wireless network. What's a wired network? So what is wired networking?
Actually wired, like physically wired together.
Say it again?
Physically wired together.
How?
In order to work.
Remember this little blue cable back here?
Ethernet.
Ethernet. So typically, most wired networking is established through Ethernet connections. Okay, so how about wireless networking?
Wi-Fi.
So Wi-Fi, exactly. And so how does your cell phone work? Since it's a wireless network, and you travel up and down the road, but you still have access, how does that work?
Wide area network.
Wide area network, how is that established though?
Tower.
Through the cell towers. So as you move from location to location, the signal on the cell tower, because it's a line of sight network, as long as you're in that line of sight where one tower can communicate with the next tower, you will always have service on your cell phone. Well, I mentioned this before in class. If you fall out of that line of sight, what happens to your call? It gets dropped. So when you see your call said failed, that means the two sites can't see your device anymore. And that usually always happens when you're driving somewhere. Because everything ain't on a flat surface when you riding around, so you'll get a drop call. So that's kind of how that works. So that's the interface. So the standard devices and interfaces using wired networking is Ethernet for the most part, and wireless networking is what? Wi-Fi. And it's done through antennas on cell towers that transmit a constant signal. As long as you have, your device can see that signal, you have communications. Just that simple. Or not that simple, because the technology is just not that simple, but how it communicates is fairly simple. Okay? Let's see. What we got? All right, so I already talked about it, the wireless network. We already talked about the device, the standard device, and the interface. Describe different network storage options. Anybody? If I got a network, how do I store my information? Don't be ashamed, don't be scared, it's a bunch of different ways, but for networks, there are certain things, how they store it. Well, okay, let's back up. Why would you even want to store anything on your network? Let's go there.
But email be one?
Huh?
Email?
Email, that's one. What else do you do on the network? You don't just do email on the network, right? Right? Yeah, so what kind of information are we talking about? Not just email. When you got a network, remember, a network communicates a lot of things, a lot of different things. So it's not just email. You don't just do email at work. You do a lot of things. You do documents, you do a lot of stuff. And all that stuff has to be recorded and documented somewhere, or you're gonna lose your information.
In the RAM?
In the RAM, but yeah, it's stored in RAM temporarily, but anything that's physical in nature, in other words, emails like you all said, that's no longer can be stored temporarily, and RAM is temporary. So once you cut your computer off, what happens to your everything stored in RAM? It goes away because it's temporary. Right?
Cookies that store passwords and stuff?
Yeah, but we don't, quote unquote, we do it in an indirect way, but we don't really store cookies. They do, but that's the website that stores the cookies more so. But I'm talking more like, if you had communications with, like your accounting ledger. I'm just gonna call it your accounting ledger, where all the money is, and where you spend your money and what you spend your money on. We gotta keep that somehow, right? Because we don't want to get rid of the monies we already spent out, accounts payable, and then the monies we receive in, accounts receivable. We need to know who paying us and who we gotta pay. Where's that stored?
Data.
Yes, data, but where's the data? You said the right term that I was looking for, data. So where do you store your data? Email is still considered data. Data center?
Database.
Database, yeah, all this stuff you still gotta have.
It's on the internet.
Some people employ data centers, so to answer your question, What do you say now?
It's on the internet.
It's on the internet, so that just means if it's on the internet, it's stored in the cloud, right? So if it's stored in a cloud, what if something happens with the cloud? How you gonna get your data now? We still talking about network storage. So we got the cloud, we got the data center. What else we got? Matter of fact, let me ask you a question. Whose data center? Exactly. So if it's a network storage option for you, then that means that you have the option to pick. You can have your own data center, but you mentioned database. So as a organization, typically they have to back up their own data also. Why is that important? Yeah, because you're relying on a data center, you're relying on the internet, the cloud, you're relying on that. But what about your own coverage, your own satisfaction, your own peace of mind?
Hard drive is hard drive.
A hard drive is storing your own data, backing up your own data. But what's the issue with that? I make you think because you're gonna have to think in real life. In the classroom, it's fine to go over it, but you really gotta think about, that's why they call it a skill, because it's really how you think about how you want to manage your data, your storage, whatever it is. You, the human being, the person, the most important part of any information system, have to come up with that. That's why you have all those different topologies for the different strategies that people employ when they are using data and they transmitting data. You gotta have an idea what you wanna do and how you wanna do it. Great example, data center, who, database, a hard drive, cloud. These are still strategies because all of them have an inherited risk involved and associated with them anyway, no matter which one you pick. But you gotta have a plan, what they call emergency plan in case something does happen. You gotta have your plan well thought out, whether it be cloud, whether it be database, whatever it is. You gotta have a strategy for that as an organization. You gotta have a backup plan. What is it? What if it becomes a disaster? What if a disaster happens and you lose all your computers in a fire? Then what? Huh?
You have to copy your data somewhere.
Yeah, where? Wow. No, I'm asking because this is part of strategy. So most businesses, the cloud, they employ the cloud, which is another place, but that's another place, not the place. Okay, so you gotta have multiple areas in which you back in your data. We talk your network up, you're storing your network, because we talk about critical information that can bankrupt a company if you don't have it. What about off-site? Like take your hard drives and store them off-site somewhere. That's always another option too. Because what happens in the event you do get an emergency, there is a flood, there is a fire. Cloud is great, but what if the cloud accessibility goes down? What if the data center goes down? So these are the things you've got to think about if you've got pertinent data. My company has every student in the state of Georgia that graduated from high school since we started doing this in 1997. You know how much information that is? Every high school. There's 800 high schools in the state of Georgia.
You have a big storage. Solid state storage.
Say it again?
Solid state storage. Too big.
No, solid state storage is not enough, actually, to be honest with
The
you.
biggest one.
Huh?
The biggest one.
The biggest one. The reason why I say that, because it's still not enough. Because remember, data grows. So let's say you call it biggest one. What's the biggest one to you? I'm gonna give you an example. Just give me a biggest one to you, a solid state storage. Give me a number. Alright, I'll give you a number. When I first brought my computer, I thought a half a terabyte would hold all my information. Well, I bought that computer, we talking storage. I bought that computer in 2000, and it had a half a terabyte. I don't know if that number registers with you, but a half a terabyte is a lot of information for a personal computer. That's a lot of storage space. I had to get an external hard drive after 3 years. So in 2023, I had already outgrew a half a terabyte of data. 3 years, and it's just me. So imagine a company storing their information, what kind of storage they need. That's my point. So you gotta think about it, not in terms of how big it is, you gotta think of in terms of how manageable it is. Because you can always go bigger, always, because as data grows, so does the technology grows for more storage. So don't think of how big, think about how you want to manage it.
They need to buy private cloud, just like Amazon has.
See, even with a private cloud, you still gotta grow with the data. Just because you call it private, don't make it bigger. Now, what I will say when you said private, they will manage it. If it's private, they will manage it, and so that'll help. But they still will tell you from time to time, "Hey, you're running out of storage. What do you want to do? This is what's going to cost you to get more storage." Because there's always a price involved with data. Because data always grows. If you keep in the data, it's going to always grow, unless you're getting rid of data. And I don't know nobody getting rid of data unless they selling it. You know.
Have a tool where they can always transfer whatever they do over here to the other.
Still, when you transfer it, once you transfer it, you gotta have more space to transfer it. The point is the space is gonna always grow, no matter how much you have here or over there. Bottom line is you're gonna keep transferring stuff because you running out of space. Over here where they had space and you keep transferring stuff because data keeps growing and now they're running out of space. So you always gotta think in terms of how you're gonna manage it, not the size of the space. Because if you're thinking about the size of the space, you'll never get it right because the size of the space is always gonna run out as long as you keep gathering data. When you keep gathering data, you keep gathering more information, you need more space, regardless how big your space is. So don't think of total space, think of how you're gonna manage it. If you do that, then it's easier on you because you think the answer is gonna be, well, just get more space. Well, that more space is gonna run out too, sooner or later, as you keep collecting data. So get in the mindset of managing it. How you gonna do when you do, what's your plan when you do run out of space? What you gonna do? How much more do you need? That's what you gotta think about. And keep adding that every so often, every so many years, keep adding that same thing, and you will eventually get your management right, so you know when you get this much of data, you already know you're gonna have to spend some money for more space, okay? All right, so let's move on.
So, what that means, you need to clean up the space.
Clean up the space? Yeah, so that's another rule for disk management or space management. When you do that and you buy more space, it's typical go back to the old space storage and clean up what you can clean up. Because there are some things that you can clean up that will help keep that space where it'll still operate. Because you know, when you get to a certain level in anything you have space-wise, the computer function is gonna start acting weird. Because you're almost at its capacity. And what happens when you fill the capacity of any container? What happens when you fill it? It overflows or it busts, right? So that's the same thing what happens with this if you're not managing it, because you can throw storage space at anything. But if you're not managing it properly, you can still have a problem because you ain't gonna go back to managing the space that you had to manage to even to get more space and begin with. So it's twofold. You buy the space, that's why I say keep the management part correct. And once you got the management part, your space will be managed, not you buying more space, because if you're buying more space and you're not managing the space, you're gonna still have a problem. Back up? That's what you said?
Yeah.
So yeah, so backup is part of it. And so backup should be regular. It should be constant. Because what if something happens the very next day that you got this data and you didn't back it up that day? That means the transactions that happened in between that, now you don't have. Or you stand the possibility of losing what they call incremental change. So my data stays the same, but then tomorrow I get more data, but my backup has what I had here. So whatever change that happened between what I had backed up and now that I have to back up is subtle difference. Those are called incremental changes. And in the database, since you mentioned backup, they have different types of incremental change, backup, full backup, and there's another one I can't think of. But either way, when you do that, if you say full, that takes longer. Plus, you're gonna have to have more space because you have more data that happened since your last backup. So it's gonna get bigger either way, it's gonna get bigger. The data's gonna get bigger, no matter how you look at it. So you gotta manage it right, okay? Next, network and internet settings in Windows to confirm that a workstation is connected to the local network and the internet. I think most of y'all know how to do that. Anybody can walk through that, talk through that using, it says use network and internet settings in Windows to confirm that a workstation, being this, these are workstations, is connected to the internet. How do you do that? Right. And you'll see in there what?
It'll tell you connection status, like not connected, not found. Then you troubleshoot it with a corresponding button, and it'll tell you further how, like exactly how disconnected it is or how close it is, and then at that point, if it's not connecting anymore to the workstation, you go to the router.
Okay. So that's troubleshooting, that's good. But so, here's what I want to say with that. Doesn't it tell you all the available networks?
Yes.
So please know that when you do that, go into that settings, go into networks, you should have a list of all the networks that it sees. You won't necessarily have access to them, but you'll see them. Like I got a guest network and my normal regular, I just call it my home network. I can see both of those to connect to when I go through that. So, to get to the internet. So, this part here, Windows, internet setting in Windows to confirm that a workstation is connected to the local network. Just please understand that that local network, you don't have access to everything in there. Only thing you have access to, you can see it, but everything you have access to, you should have a password to. If you can get into any network you see without a password, I will caution you, don't do it. Why?
They're gonna hack you.
You can get hacked.
They're gonna put some junk on your computer.
That's right. And the same thing with this phone. You trying to get access to the network, you can't get on your network, blah, blah, blah. So you take the risk of attaching to a network that just allows you to get in. You just messed up, possibly. Not always, but typically, if you can get into someone's network freely, I'm telling you right now, if it doesn't require a password, you asking for trouble.
Like Walmart, and you got a password, like you don't
Yeah,
know what's on there.
but the thing is, the problem with that is because Walmart network is so prominent. What if I set up my roguish network right there
That's
with
what I'm saying, a
Rogue.
lot of people can do that, and they
Yeah.
don't know the difference.
That's what I'm saying. So personally, I wouldn't even make an attempt to get on to anybody's network without them requiring or asking for a password. This is how I would look at it. That's just my personal, because free costs somebody something. And believe you me, if somebody allowing you to get onto their network for free, they go get something from you. It might be something you don't want them to have.
Get your bank account.
But just be careful, that's all I'm saying. If they don't ask for a password, be careful. You know, because that's dangerous to me. And it's gotten worse, you know. All right, let's go through these terms real quick. Network interface, what is that?
UI.
Network interface is a UI, user interface. UI is a user interface. I'm talking about network interface. So while we are on it, what's a user?
I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, so user interface is what you deal with as a user with the actual computer, desktop. That's the user interface with the computer. But what's the network interface?
Network communication.
So what do we use for network interface? To interface with the network, what do we use?
Network box.
Router.
Net card.
I said the network, so the network allows you access to the internet. So how do we interface with the network? Say again? Let me ask it a different way. How do we get access to the network? To your network or to the internet? See, this is what I want y'all to understand. We're so common in use in what we talk and how we talk. We'll interchange terms, and sometimes when it comes to a test, we look at it one way and think in another way. But I want y'all all to keep thinking about the term that's being asked. And when I say network, I'm not talking about the internet. I'm talking about the network. The network allows you to get to the internet through an ISP, but that's what we're not talking about. We're talking about a network interface.
Ethernet or wireless?
Thank you. We've been talking about it all during the class. This little blue thing right here allows you access to Ethernet, allows you access or gives you the on-ramp to the network. And once you have access to the network, you have to have an ISP in order to get to the internet. Okay? So let's try to make that perfectly clear how that works. Because it's not simple. This is not simple, but the more you think about it and put your mind to it, like these terms. A network interface, in order to interface with the network, you gotta have the cable, or either wireless. So it's either you wired to the network or you got wireless to the network, which is Wi-Fi and all of those things. So I just want you to understand that because a lot of times, I'm sorry?
That's the point of connection, basically.
Yeah, point of connection, yeah. So the network cable, we already went through that. That's Ethernet, thank you, I appreciate that. How about the wall jack? Say it again. Yeah, so this is a wall jack, although this is an electrical wall jack for your plug-in, for your power. We don't even hardly have these, they used to be kind of common. But anyway, they're a little smaller, and they look the same. If you look on the back of your computer that the Ethernet plug is plugged into, that is really what was on the wall at one time. But because these run from your computer, like I said, through that line, through a conduit to the wiring closet, guess what happens at the wiring closet? You have a similar port, just like you got on the back of your computer that the Ethernet cable plugs into. So that's really considered the wall jack, but they used to have it all around the walls that you would plug computers in because they used to call it a data jack. Now they've combined it. Now it's all the same.
Someone test out lab. Someone test out lab, you gotta plug in the Ethernet.
Yeah, exactly right. And then we used to test through those. We could test through those to see what the problem was. We already talked about LAN, we already talked about WAN. What's a metropolitan area? So that connects all, let's call it Atlanta Metro. Everything in Atlanta that's considered Atlanta Metro is connected to a MAN. Okay, so that's a metropolitan area.
That's larger than wide?
No. No.
Not really?
It just depends on the size of the metropolitan. Because some metropolitans are bigger than some wide area networks. But a WAN is typically anything. So WAN?
Oh, he said WAN. I was saying.
Nah, that's all right.
My bad.
You good? So WAN covers surrounding areas typically. Metropolitan covers bigger than surrounding. So I would say, in this case, for definition, a MAN is probably bigger because in Atlanta anyway. Because Atlanta Metro is way bigger than a lot of wide area networks and a lot of other places because it just carries so many people, so much communication, so many users. And that's what really matters, how you pick this or how you have to have one of these is by the number of users. We can say LAN here because this is 30 users. But will that LAN suffice in a WAN? No, because 30 users in a wide area network will overwhelm that network. The amount of users. Same thing with metropolitan area. The number of users that are in a metropolitan area will probably overwhelm most wide area networks. That's how you look at it. We already talked about bus, we already talked about ring, we already talked about star, and we already talked about mesh. So, with that being said, I think, yes, 12 o'clock about, I'll cover one more thing real quick. I want to talk about these are some of the wall jacks, if you will, the connectors, 1145, wireless Bluetooth, and NFC, near field communications. Don't know, I have to look at that. We all should understand those, most of those. We can go over those again. Those are not hard. I'm trying to get to something that, all right, so here we go. So local area, usually in the same building. Wide area, interconnected LAN, so they connect a bunch of buildings by definition. And then metro covers larger geographical areas than a LAN, but it's usually as large as a WAN. So see what I'm saying? So the LAN, the WAN connects a bunch of LAN, WAN connects a bunch of LAN.
Your tongue twister.
And a MAN is typically smaller than a WAN because a WAN's job is to connect all of the LANs, right? So I got it a little backwards, but the bottom line is I wanted to make sure I went over that definition. We did that. All right, this is the last thing and I'm gonna let you all know. Physical address. What is that? You ever heard of a MAC address?
Yes.
So what is it? It's a physical address, but what is it? So every device in here has a stamped number on their communications card. When I say communications card, what I mean, or their network card, what I mean. The thing that the Ethernet cable is plugged into. For a lack of a better understanding, it's as simple as I could put it. On that blue cable on your computer, it's connected to a card, what they call a NIC card, which is a network interface card. The boot cable is connected to that, Ethernet. And so on that card, on that NIC, there is stamped an IP address. Right. So you can't fake that because you can't change that. So that's why everybody knows from the cybersecurity standpoint where that information came from. Unless a hacker disguises where they came from. That's why it's important to protect your login ID on your computer. because they can do something to your computer to mask theirs, and it'll look like it's coming from yours, okay? So that's why it's important to protect your ID, your login ID and things like that, because that way they hide the mask address that it is really coming from and point it to a wrong man. So it'll make it look like it's coming from this, and they're using the internet for whatever purpose. Because that MAC address is now hidden, but you only see this MAC address for this particular computer. And so what's a logical address? That's what the internet assigns you, the IP it assigns you. Y'all know the difference between dynamic and static IP addresses? There's some way computers are designed now. Every time you access the internet, you use a different IP address. Even though you have a MAC address, when you send the information out, it's establishing a different IP address for you to navigate on the internet. Why you think they do that? Yeah, it's for some protection, just like I said. Some people can take your IP address and use it for other reasons because it's not your IP address. Your MAC address is your computer address. But when you send out information or a message on your computer, it uses an IP address that's dynamic because they don't want the internet to get bogged down with stagnant IPs. Does that make sense? So they kind of give you a fresh IP address when you're sending out any new message, but your MAC address will never change. Just the message you sending it on that IP will change because it's set up to give you a dynamic IP every time you request anything from any server anywhere. Okay? So we good on that? All right. So with that being said, let me see who. I pretty much got everybody today. Any questions? This is actually chapter 6. So what I'm going over is stuff for exam number 3, which will be due next weekend. I won't be here next weekend. That's why I'm trying to cover a little bit of it now. That's why we staying a little longer, because I had to go over some of these things here. All right? And I am going to send an announcement or an email to you telling you the in-class practices that I want you guys to do. Again, it's not mandatory, it's optional, but it will reinforce a lot of these concepts, okay? All right, so you're free to go. Yes.